You are listening to Cool FM, live from Cool Studios. This is Cool News at 11.
Good morning and welcome to Cool News at 11. Starting with the international headlines, as Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky said Tuesday on the sidelines of a NATO summit in Washington that 43 people were killed in Russian strike on Ukraine on Monday, raising the total from 37 dead. 43 people were killed by this attack, Zelensky said in a speech to a think tank. Russia on Tuesday issued an arrest warrant for Yulia Navalnaya, accusing the exiled opposition figure of participating in an extremist organization. A court said it had approved the request of the investigator and decided a preventive measure in the form of detention for 2 months. Navalnaya has vowed to continue the work of her husband Alexei Navalny, Russian leader Vladimir Putin's male opponent who died in an Arctic prison in February. Navalnaya slammed the warrant in a statement saying Vladimir Putin is a killer and a criminal. He belongs in prison. The activist team also dismissed the allegations. Navalnaya was arrested in absentia for being a member of an extremist community by the infamous Basmanny Court of Moscow, wrote Leonid Vodkov, Navalny's former chief of staff, on X. Quite a recognition of Yulia's determination to continue Alexei's fight, he added. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz on Tuesday also criticized Russia's move, calling the arrest order a warrant against the desire for freedom and democracy in the post on X. Navalny's organizations have been outlawed in Russia, labeled an extremist group, and put on an official terrorist list. Navalnaya and economics stood by her husband as he galvanized mass protests in Russia, flying him out of the country while he was poisoned before they instantly returned to Moscow with him in 2021, knowing he would be jailed. Following his death, Navalnaya vowed out to take her late husband's work and has lobbied against Putin's government from abroad. During Russian elections in March, Navalnaya called for mass protests against Putin by forming long queues outside voting stations. Now let's get into national headlines. As amid tensions due to Chinese incursions in the West Philippine Sea, Catholic leaders are calling on the faithful to pray that the situation would be resolved peacefully. Caloocan Bishop Virgilio David, president of the Catholic Bishops Conference of the Philippines, said they were coming up with an obligatory prayer or orato imperata for peace to be praying in all churches throughout the country. The prayer will be said starting July 25, the feast of St. James, until January 1, which is celebrated in the Catholic Church as the World Day of Peace, but the Solemnity of Mary, the Mother of God, is also observed. David said they were coming up with a prayer in the context of the growing geopolitical tensions in our part of the world. Of late, there has been an increased presence of Chinese Coast Guard, Navy, and maritime militaries inside the country's territorial waters as part of its assertion of sovereignty over much of the South China Sea, even as its nine dash line claims had been invalidated by an international tribunal in 2016. Amid this, President Marcos had strengthened defense alliance with the United States and its Asia-Pacific allies, raising concerns about the country being dragged into its heated rivalry with China. These were among the major issues discussed by the 83 prelates who attended the CBCP's 128th plenary assembly in the city, which ended on Monday. Instead of a stand, we are coming up with a prayer. We are not political leaders, we are spiritual and moral leaders, and we know that our compatriots, our people in the country, are getting tense. We do not want to add further fuel to the tension, David said. Nobody wants a war. Our parents were part of a generation who were traumatized by the Second World War. We really have not just to work for peace, but to pray for peace. That is our disposition as bishops, David said. On our own, we are trying to seriously understand what is happening to our country in the context of the geopolitical tensions, he further said. Last week, the Holy See stopped Timoplat, Archbishop Paul Gallagher urged countries to abide by international law and pursue dialogue to settle their differences. Gallagher met with Foreign Affairs Secretary Enrique Manalo in Manila to discuss the tensions in the West Philippine Sea and the Taiwan Strait, among others, before speaking before the bishops in the retreat in Bukidnon in the run-up to the plenary assembly. The Vatican is always in favor of the rule of order, and they do recognize the UNCLOS, United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, and so they are sympathetic with the rights of our country as laid out in the UNCLOS, David noted. But the Vatican is an advocate of peace. As much as possible, we make it a point to de-escalate tensions, to get people to talk reasonably, to dialogue, because that is the approach always of the Church. Nobody wins in a violent war, he added. Alright, coming up on koolNews at 11, Philippine Statistics Authority is working on updated list of census of population this year. In international headlines, NATO boosts Ukraine air defenses as doubts over Biden cloud summit. One dead as boat with 18 migrants goes down on off Colombia. And back to end. May trade deficit narrows to $4.60 billion, according to Philippine Statistics Authority. Also coming up later on koolNews at noon, Beanie's Pantropico hits 100 million streams on Spotify and YouTube Music. Stick around, koolNews at 11 will return after these messages. It is now 30 minutes after 11. Welcome back. The Philippine Statistics Authority wanted to update further its database of population for a more accurate and inclusive list, which aims to help the government to identify qualified beneficiaries for its social protection initiatives through community-based monitoring. The PSA combined the conduct of census of population PopSen with the community-based monitoring system CMBS MS operations to capitalize government resources and to avoid fatigue to respondents ahead of the original schedule in 2025. The 2024 PopSense-CBMS an updated list of beneficiaries of government protection systems. I'm sorry, not systems, programs. Static son of the census and technical core was said in a statement during a press briefing on Tuesday. Beginning on July 15, the PSA is set to deploy more than 70,000 enumerators all over the country to conduct house-to-house interviews, of which the interview is expected to take from 45 minutes to 1 hour each household. The statistics agency projected about 27 million households that will be surveyed for the activity across the country. The budget for the project amounted to 5.2 billion pesos, according to National Statistics Consigliere Dennis Mapa. Mapa also said that this will help the government to have accurate data of the country's population count, especially in implementing crisis management plans such as cash assistance programs during a crisis. The PSA also seeks to improve the number of Filipinos who are birth registered. As of September 2020, birth registration stood at 96.6%, while 3.4% are not registered, or about 3.7 million Filipinos. Our expectation is that by 2024, 99.9% of our citizens should be registered at birth, Mapa said in a press briefing. Final population count and CMS will be completed by December and will be submitted to the National Economic Development Authority for the identification of vulnerable households. NEDA Secretary RCO Balisacan highlighted the benefits of the data collection system that will be used for planning, program implementation, and impact monitoring at the local level. Collected information on health, education, employment, and other sectors informs us about the needs and priorities of our communities. The data will also help identify the vulnerable sectors and communities that require immediate support and socioeconomic interventions, Balisacan said in a statement. Now, for the international headlines once again, as US President Joe Biden on Tuesday announced a major package of air defenses for Ukraine as doubts over his political survival clouded the start of the NATO summit in Washington. Leaders from the 32-nation military alliance were looking to put on the show of resolve against Russia during 3 days of prop-filled ceremony in the US Capitol marking NATO's 75th anniversary. But questions over Biden's fitness to govern trended to dominate the gathering as the 81-year-old faces calls to quit the race for the second term after a disastrous debate performance against challenger Donald Trump. Looking to refocus attention on U.S. steadfastness, Biden kicked off the summit by announcing Washington will provide Ukraine with an additional Patriot air defense system. The war will end with Ukraine remaining a free, independent country. Russia will not prevail. Biden said at the ceremony in a room where NATO's founding treaty was signed in 1949. This is a pivotal moment for Europe, for the transatlantic community, and I might add, for the world, he said. The US pledge comes on top of two new Patriot systems already being given by Germany and Romania, and one the Netherlands has said it is putting together with parts from other allies. The air defenses will help to protect Ukrainian cities, civilians, and soldiers, Biden said in a joint statement with other leaders, adding that they would look to send thousands more shorter-range systems in the coming months. Ukraine has for months been clamoring for 7 additional Patriot systems to help protect against devastating Russian strikes 2.5 years into the invasion. The war-torn country's vulnerability to Moscow's missile was cruelly exposed by a strike Monday on the Children's Hospital in Kyiv. NATO Chief Jens Stoltenberg urged countries across the alliance to maintain their backing for Kiev, warning that if Russia wins, it will be the greatest risk for NATO. The outcome of this war will shape global security for decades to come, Stoltenberg said. The time to stand for freedom and democracy is now. The place is UK. At least one person died when a boat carrying 18 undocumented migrants sank off Colombia's Caribbean coast on Tuesday, the country's migration office said. 15 people were rescued, 6 of whom were children, the agency announced on X. No details were available regarding the other 2 people on board. The incident occurred near the islands of San Andres and Providencia, close to Colombia's border with Nicaragua. Military officials said a research and rescue operation was underway by Navy rapid reaction units along with the Air Force. And now for the trade deficit, the country's trade and goods deficit in May narrowed as exports and imports fell after a month of expansion. Preliminary data from the Philippine Tax Authority showed the trade in goods balance, the difference between exports and imports, amounted to a $4.60 billion deficit in May, narrowing from the $4.73 billion shortfall recorded in the previous month, but still wider than the $4.40 deficit in May last year. This was the narrowest trade gap since the previous month. Total sales of Philippine-made goods declined by 3.1% year-on-year to 6.33 billion pesos in May, a reversal from the revised 27.9% growth in April and the 2.7% seen in the same period last year. By value, export receipt in May was the lowest since April. Likewise, the country's merchandise imports fell by 0.03% year-on-year to $10.83 billion in May. This was a reversal from the previous month's 30% growth. The contraction, however, was still lower than 8% decline in May 2023. Import bill in May was the lowest level in 2 months or since the $9.57 billion in March. The Development Budget Coordination Committee projects 5% and 2% growth in exports and imports, respectively, for this year. Recapping our top stories for this hour, Zelensky says Russian strikes on Monday killed 43 people in Ukraine. Russia issues warrant for exiled opposition figure Yulia Navalnaya. Catholic bishops seek prayers to calm West Philippine Sea tension. NATO boosts Ukraine air defenses as doubts over Biden. 1 person dead as boat with 80 migrants goes down off Colombia. And May trade deficit narrows to $4.60 billion. And that is it for koolNews at 11. As always, you can send a news tip or feedback to us at tvh.philippines.news@gmail.com. And we will return with more headlines later with koolNews at noon at 12 noon. Until then, I am Asper. We will see you later for more headlines at noon. Goodbye for now.